Hello, welcome to the channel 12 Step Guide with Troy O. Today we're going to visit Step 3, Part 2. If you didn't have an opportunity to see Part 1, I encourage you to do that now. Last time we ended at Bill's story, we ended a little abruptly. We're going to return to that today and we're going to begin there. The brain has imagination and fantasy. I'd like to employ that today with you, and we're going to go on a boat ride with Bill. So say hello to Bill in this fantasy, and we're going to start today, 1939, in the book, big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, at his story. And then we'll go over to the 12 and 12 step book that came out 13 years later, and we'll look at step 3 in that book to better understand what's going on. In Bill's story here, we're going to take a look at a spiritual experience. In fact, Bill's going to help us understand this spiritual experience. Now, Bill has discovered alcohol in the military. Veterans, you have an idea of what I'm saying. Some of what is happening, much of what's going to be covered here, should speak to you if you've been deployed. This will be page 10 in the original book or page 1 in the newer version. All right, let's get started. We're gonna get on a boat from whatever country we're in, and we're gonna head on over to England. In time, we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. Here's a man that's sailing to another country, feeling very lonely. Alcohol's propping him up. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Now, what's going on here? World War One. Bill's in military uniform. He's in England. He's going to fight in a war. He's alone, scared, at a church, contemplating, no doubt, many things. And I'm going to read a verse here, and it's going to require some interpretation. Let me start with this verse that he's reading is from a tomb of 1764. It's a 26-year-old who dies of a violent fever. And there's a word here that Bill's interpretation, because he didn't have the internet, 1764 to the early 1900s, a different time. So, small beer. So, what is small beer? In 1764, it was 3-2 beer, a low alcohol beer that they were drinking in replace of water because water was poison oftentimes. And so, this stuff was stabilized water. It wasn't particularly anything to get you drunk. It was real low alcohol, but nonetheless, you understand it. Now, Bill probably interpreted this as simply a small amount of beer. Either way, the interpretation is accurate. So I'm going to just start this reading. So we landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral, much moved. I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. And it read, "Here lies a Hampshire grenadier, who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is near forgotten, whether he dieth by musket or by pot." So, a couple of things. Why am I reading this? Bill doesn't like to repeat himself, and we're going to get into this because he's repeated himself now a couple of three times on this in this story. We're going to see it as we evolve. There's real significance here that could easily be missed. And now I'm going to interpret what he just said in a more common day language for you. My attention was caught by a verse on an old tombstone. Here lies a soldier who caught his death, drinking cold, small beer. A good soldier is never forgotten, whether he died by musket or regardless of the reason of why he died. So let's assume Bill's scared to death, going to war, and he's reading a little bit of beer kills some poor guy, a soldier back in the 1700s, contemplating life. And we're going to evolve on this concept. And something happened at Winchester Cathedral. How do I know that? We're gonna continue on. Now, when Bill left the war, he was 22 years old, a veteran of foreign wars. So here's a guy that survived being active military and the Great Depression. Despite those things, got sober. It's important, I think. If anybody thinks that life's difficult, it certainly can be. So as Bill's story progresses, there's a second reference to this Winchester Cathedral. He's in the middle of being 12 stepped at the table with EBT. And they're contemplating picking over different parts of their life. EBT's 2 months sober. And he's reflecting on his grandfather who was rejecting the preacher's words and didn't have to conform, and then his death. But something about that caught him. And he makes a reference. He says, that wartime day in old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. Something happened at Winchester Cathedral. I've worked with many, many people, and I'm here to tell you, I've never found a time where there wasn't some sort of a spiritual experience, some unexplained event, something that is just quite can't be explained. It doesn't sit right with you, and it appears spiritual in nature. It's there, but maybe it's long since been forgotten. So moving on. So then Bill takes step one at the table with EBT, and then he's in the middle. He's going to take step two, drunk at the table with EBT, and parts of that in I tell us, why don't you choose your own contemplation of God? EBT tells him he's trying to work around some of these hangups that Bill has. And then a little bit more later, it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make a beginning. So then he's going to get into more about the cathedral. This paragraph could easily be missed. This is all about his experience at the cathedral. It is not present day. So here we go. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon, the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself, worldly issues, things that happened. And so it had been ever since, how blind I had been. So something blocked that later on. But let's go back and consider this for a second. Here's a guy at the cathedral, dropped dead of a little bit of alcohol in Bill's mind, And here's Bill, he fights the war, and now he's out there sucking in all the alcohol he can find. It's some real hard stuff. It isn't that 3-2 beer he's drinking. And somehow he has survived in his finest efforts, in his self will, and all he does is destroy and ruin everything. That's who he is. That's what he is. That's what he has become. Everybody hasn't. This is Bill that has gotten to this point finally to see the truth, and something significant is coming back to him at that day where he was afraid of his life. I asked you in the last video, is there a time that you recall, not this everyday wannabe prayer, this real stuff when your life's on the line or something significant, you're breaking a sweat and you're really praying? That moment, maybe you can look back in the past and find your own spiritual event that may have taken place to help you, because this is about taking step 3, understanding how step 3 might be taken and why. So what do we know after that? Now we're back in the present. So Billy took step 2 at the table with every tea he's drunk. But now, and apparently, according to Joe and Charlie, Big Book study, he didn't get sober right away. He finished his bender at some point in the near future. He got sober. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremors, DTs. So here's his, as he understands God, here's his communication to God, because his finest efforts at life were a disaster. Maybe somebody else, some other power, something could help to guide him. There I humbly offered myself to God, as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. Now, we don't know Bill's understanding with this higher power. I don't know anyone's understanding with the higher power, not really. But I petition this. Do you think it's your higher power's will to have you be a drunk and to destroy everything? Or does that even make sense? I mean, that don't sound like no positive higher power that I would know. Maybe, just maybe, the higher power, if you pursue a positive one, whether it be the groups, whether it be God, can help you to a better life, to a freedom. So we're going to skip back on up to step 3 in the Big Book. The second half, I had said before, there was 2 places where you started step 3. We're going to go right to the second one, because in italicized there it's as we understood him. So what does he say? And I'm just going to read it. God, it's a prayer. I offer myself to you, to do with me and build with me as you will. Relieve me of selfish, self-seeking, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them will bear witness to those I would carry the message of your love, your power, in your way of life. May I do your will always. So whatever happened, it carried up here. It meant something to him. He built upon that. And he says you can do that prayer with someone else. You can do it alone. But what's important is that you're right-minded when you do it. And I hope that I have been able to at least introduce to you where his mind was at and why, and some things in his life to help understand what step 3 might look like. So let's see what else is on Bill's mind. We're going to go step 3 in the step book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to read the whole chapter to you, but I'm going to interpret, because Bill's quite the writer. So I want to make sure you understand what he's saying to the best of my ability. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. That's very important, as we understand him, your own understanding, and it's understood. Okay, it's kind of past tense. You're kind of getting there based on what you know. It's not go out and learn about it and then do it. You can do that later. Just try to come to some understanding or hope that maybe there's a better way. It's there's got to be a better way. Practicing step three is like the opening of a door, which to all appearances is still closed and locked. All we need is a key in the decision to swing the door open. There is only one key, and it is called willingness. You need to be willing to open up your heart to a higher power, even if that's just the meetings and people that can help you. Once unlocked by willingness, the door opens almost by itself. And looking through it, we shall see a pathway besides which is an inscription. It reads, "This is the way to a faith that works." In the first two steps, we're going to size up the first two steps here. This is important information. We were engaged in reflection. It's kind of a historical review of ourselves. It's just a look back. We saw that we were powerless over alcohol, had a problem with alcohol, but we also perceived that faith of some kind, if only in AA itself, is possible to anyone. These conclusions did not require action. There's no action here. It's something in between your ears. They require acceptance to accept there can be other way, to accept that you don't have to live that way, that you don't have to be treated that way, whatever your problem might be, whatever your step one is. Like all the remaining steps, three calls for affirmative action, some kind of a serious action, continuous action. For it is only by action that we can cut away the self will which has always blocked the entry of God, this self will that keeps taking us down a destructive path and bringing others also with us. Block the entry of God, or if you like, a higher power into our lives. Faith, to be sure, is necessary, but faith alone can avail nothing. So without, if you just have faith and no works, you're going to get nowhere. We can have faith yet keep God out of our lives. Therefore, our problem now becomes just how and by what specific means, how exactly shall we be able to let Him in? How do you let this higher power, a higher power, and something, some force that can help? Step three represents our first attempt to do this. In fact, the effectiveness, how good it works, of the whole AA program will rest upon how well and earnestly we have tried to come to a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him, the care of some external force that you trust can help you get your life straightened out, address the alcohol issue, address other people maybe that aren't treating you right in your life, whatever the problem is, food in a bag, whatever the other issues, whatever the step one is for you. To every worldly and practical minded beginner, this step looks hard, even impossible. No matter how much one wishes to try, exactly how can he turn his own will and his own life over to the care of whatever God he thinks there is? Fortunately, we who have tried it and with equal misgivings can testify that anyone at all, can begin to do it. We can further add that a beginning, even the smallest, is all that is needed, just a small willingness. Once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door ever so slightly open, we find that we can always open it some more. Though self will may slam it shut again, so self will can get in the way. We take back over and start heading down another road. Maybe that road leads to the bar. As it frequently does, it will always respond the moment we again pick up the key of willingness. If you set your sights in the direction of recovery, you can get there. Maybe this all sounds mysterious and remote, something like Einstein's theory of relativity or a proposition of nuclear physics. It isn't at all. Let's look at how practical it actually is. So he's going to use an example here, even if the simplest, if this is all you can do to get started, it's a great beginning and it's enough. Every man and woman who has joined AA and intends to stick has, without realizing it, made a beginning on step three. Isn't it true that in all matters touching upon alcohol, each of them has decided to turn his or her life over to the care, protection, and guidance of Alcoholics Anonymous? Already a willingness has been achieved to cast out one's own will and one's own ideas about the alcohol problem in favor of those suggested by AA. Any willing newcomer feels sure AA is the only safe harbor for the foundering vessel he has become. So he's beaten. That's why he's coming to AA, not because life's good. Now, if this is not turning one's will and life over to a newfound providence, that's a spiritual protection, then what is? But suppose that instinct, this is something that's potentially programmed into us from birth. It's pretty deep stuff. Instinct to breathe, instinct, sexual instinct, there's all kinds of instincts out there. Suppose instinct still cries out, as it certainly, well, yes, respecting alcohol, I guess I have to be dependent upon AA, but in all other matters, I must still maintain my independence. Nothing is going to turn me into a nonentity. So this is fear talking based on no real knowledge. If I keep on turning my life and my will over to the care of something or somebody else, what will become of me? I'll look like the hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism. So programming from birth and overly thinking, self-important, interferes with seeking a higher power. That's a different way of saying it. The trouble is that this kind of thinking takes no real account of the facts, and the facts seem to be these. The more we become willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence, as AA practices it, is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit, freedom from alcohol. Let's examine for a moment the idea of dependence at a level of everyday living. So he's going to use an example here that I think is pretty powerful. In this area, it is startling to discover how dependent we really are and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electrical wiring carrying power and light to its interior. We are delighted with the dependence. Our main hope is that nothing will ever cut off the supply of current. By so accepting our dependence upon this marvel of science, we find ourselves more independent personally. Not only are we more independent, we are even more comfortable and secure. Power flows just where it is needed, silently and surely. Electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs and our most desperate ones, too. Ask the polio sufferer confined to an iron lung who depends with complete trust upon a motor to keep the breath of life in him. So these days, what dependent on a car and certainly the house and heat and air conditioning and food at the store and on and on and on. These things we just take for granted, but we are dependent and it makes us more independent, is what he's saying. But the moment our mental or emotional independence is in question, we're starting to put some thought into it now. How differently we behave, how persistently we claim the right to decide all by ourselves just what we shall think and just how we shall act. Oh, yes, we'll weigh the pros and cons of every problem. We'll listen politely to those who would advise us, but all the decisions are to be ours alone. Nobody is going to meddle with our personal independence in such matters. Besides, we think there is no one who we can surely trust. We are certain that our intelligence, backed by willpower, can rightly control our inner lives and guarantee us success in the world we live in. This brave philosophy, this contemplation of our life, wherein each man plays God, sounds good in the speaking, but it still has to meet the acid test. How well does it actually work? One good look in the mirror ought to be answer enough for any alcoholic. Should his own image in the mirror be too awful to contemplate, and it usually is, you consider in yourself and your life looking in the mirror, he might first take a look at the results normal people. Now we're going to get into what the results are of normal people are getting from self sufficiency. Everywhere he sees people filled with anger and fear, society breaking up into warring fragments. Each fragment says to the others, "We are right and you are wrong." Every such pressure group, if it is strong enough, self righteously imposes its will, its values, upon the rest. And everywhere the same thing is being done on an individual basis. The sum of all this mighty effort is less peace and less brotherhood than before. Now, this is the average person still. He's talking about the average. The philosophy of self sufficiency is not paying off. Plainly enough, it is a bone crushing juggernaut, a governing force, bone crushing governing force whose final achievement is ruin, a disaster. Therefore, we who are alcoholics can consider ourselves fortunate indeed. Each of us had his own near fatal encounter with the juggernaut, that inner governing we have inside of us, the inner juggernaut of self will, and has suffered enough under its weight to be willing to look for something better. So it is by circumstance, failed efforts, rather than by any virtue, any good behavior, that we have been driven to AA, have admitted defeat, have acquired to get something, the rudiments of faith, the basic elements of faith, and now want to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to a higher power. We realize that the word dependence is as distasteful to many psychiatrists and psychologists as it is to alcoholics. Now we're going to talk about maybe the codependent in some respects. Like our professional friends, we too are aware that there are wrong forms of dependence. We have experienced many of them. No adult man or woman, for example, should be in too much emotional dependence upon a parent. They should have been weaned long before, and if they have not been, they should wake up to that fact. This very form of faulty dependence has caused many a rebellious alcoholic to conclude that dependence of any sort must be intolerably damaging. But dependence upon an AA group or upon a higher power hasn't produced any baleful results, any bad results. So he's going to use another example, the war. When World War II broke out, this spiritual principle had its first major test. AA entered the services and were scattered all over the world, where they were able to take discipline, stand up under fire, and endure the monotony and misery of war. Would the kind of dependence they had learned in AA carry them through? Well, it did. They had even fewer alcoholic lapses or emotional binges than AA's safe at home. They were just as capable of endurance and valor as any other soldiers, whether in Alaska or on the Salerno beach, had their dependence upon a higher power worked, and far from being a weakness, the dependence was their chief source of strength. So what we have here is another war, life's efforts. Life's tough enough. Throw the alcohol and bad behavior into it, and we become the extreme examples, the struggles, and When we can get help and clear out this stuff, we can enter a much better way of life. Before I finish the reading, I want to frame out the rest. One, what's my opposition to milking step one, two, and three for a year in the program? A couple of things. One, we see Bill W. did step one and two drunk, and he did step three. I don't know, maybe he was 10 days, maybe he was 20 days sober at the hospital, but it was early on. It wasn't milking it for a year. And while I get that there's certain barriers to overcome, okay, but there's more than that. And we're going to get into this here. There's something for the alcoholic and addict, especially. I'm not limiting it to that, but there's something that happens between a month and 3 months sober. You start coming back to life. You start feeling things. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that, if you don't deal with it, can very much likely send you back out drinking, the pain of it. And I've heard people say, oh, if you start step four too early, you'll be back to drinking. You know, if you start step four wrong, there's a good chance. But I'm going to teach you how it was intended to be done, and that's going to happen in the next video. And we're going to take that slow, but we're going to take it. You come on up to step four with me, and let's do that together. It'll make sense to you, each piece, and I'll make sure it does, so that there's no fear, and so these things, so that you can address the problems we're going to start to talk about right here and right now, because Bill knows. So, how exactly can the willing person continue to turn his will and his life over to the higher power? Question. He made a beginning, we have seen, when he commenced to rely upon AA for the solution of his alcohol problem. By now, though, the chances are that he has become convinced that he has more problems than alcohol. He got problems more than alcohol. And that some of these refuse to be solved by all the sheer personal determination and courage he can muster. These things are weighing on him. He's not getting enough at this point. Now, you go into AA and talking all the time, you're getting something, and that's why it's people coming together to talk about their common problem. But if you're not getting into the higher steps, you're 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 sitting in your shit and doing little about it. If you don't mind me touching on that, they simply will not budge. They make him desperately unhappy and threaten his newfound sobriety. Our friend is still victimized. He's a victim now of his own history, still victimized by remorse and guilt when he thinks of yesterday, the guilt that burned in me after a month sober, and the pain and the clarity of all that garbage, trying to sift through that and being told to stay on step one or step one, two, and three. And I couldn't address that stuff in step one, two, or three. If I had only known, it would have made a marked difference on my recovery. I was willing. Bitterness still overpowers him when he broods upon those he's pissed off. He still envies or hates. So there's these people out there, he wants to be like them or have what they have, or he hates them for whatever reason. His financial insecurity worries him sick, and panic takes over when he thinks of all the bridges to safety that alcohol burned behind him and the family too. And how shall he ever straighten out that awful jam that cost him the affection of his family and separated him from them? To not regret the past or no wish to shut the door on it. to comprehend the word serenity and to know peace. He His lone courage and unaided will cannot do it. Surely he must now depend upon somebody or something else, some higher force that can help bring him along, some set of directions, guidelines, principles to help him advance, to relieve himself of this pain, or he'll drink again, or drug, or go back to the dependent, or eat, or cut, or go back gambling, whatever the case is, go back to swearing, be all rage, pissed off, and can't control anything, whatever the behaviors are, the outlet that it's going to show up. At first, that somebody is likely to be his closest AA friend, maybe a sponsor. He relies upon the assurance that his many troubles, now made more acute, they feel worse, because he cannot use alcohol to kill the pain, because now you can't even use alcohol to kill the pain and it hurts inside. Can be solved too. Of course, the sponsor points out that our friend's life is still unmanageable, even though he is sober. Might be kind of like on a dry drunk at this point. You stay stuck on one, two, and three. That, after all, only a bare start on AA's program has been made. Step one and two, three is just the bare minimum to this program. I encourage you, come on up to step four with me. Trust me. More sobriety brought about by the admission of alcoholism and by attendance at a few meetings is very good indeed. So going to A is great. But that's not where much of this deeper stuff is going to happen, this deeper relief. Nor did you, well, probably didn't just drink alcohol 1 hour a day or think of drinking it 1 hour a day or whatever the problems were. So feeling is very good indeed, but it is bound to be a far cry from permanent sobriety and a contented, useful life, a real good, happy, meaningful life. That is just where the remaining steps of the AA program come in. Nothing short of continuous action upon these as a way of life can bring the much desired result. So continued action. He's encouraging you to do the higher steps. A guy that did his in a month being 12 stepped by a guy 2 months sober ABT. So these are important pieces of information. Just because someone, we got a bunch of people that have been sober a while doesn't mean that they know what's best for you and the speed at which you can progress, as long as you understand each point in the path. Then it is explained that other steps of the AA program can be practiced with success only when step 3 is given a determined and persistent trial. This statement may surprise newcomers who have experienced nothing but constant deflation and a growing conviction that human will is of no value whatever. They have become persuaded, even rightly so, that many problems besides alcohol will not yield to a headlong assault powered by the individual alone. But now, it appears that there are certain things which only the individual can do. So, yes, you've been using your will to try to attack these things, but if you use your will to point to a higher power and pursue that direction, you can and move along in the right path, and you can address these issues all by himself and in the light of his own circumstances. This is done by himself. Nobody can do it for you. He needs to develop the quality of willingness. Willingness is a big one. When he acquires willingness, he is the only one who can make the decision to exert himself. I encourage you to become willing and exert yourself to step 4. If you can't do anything else, do step 4 right now. We will get you there, and you will understand how and why. Trying to do this is an act of his own will. All of the 12 steps require sustained and personal exertion to conform to their principles. So, personal exertion to conform to get on the ride, to conform to their principles, and so we trust to God's will. So get on the ride of the 12 steps and do them. And I'm going to get you good information so that you understand how to do them. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. Let me say that a different way. My best efforts got me drunk. I lost my cars. I lost my job. I lost where I lived. I was tearing everything apart, destroying myself, the people around me. I just was on a destructive path. Now, others may not have gone down the path so bad, but there's still time. We had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. I do not believe God's intention for me is to be a drunk or to destroy my life or to hurt others. I just don't believe it. It's not consistent with my experience with my higher power either. Here I am. I hope I don't look to you of someone that is seeking to hurt you or limit anyone that could get this program, nor did Bill. He understood this was a program for anyone that wanted it. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps, and step 3 opens the door. Once we have come into agreement with these ideas, it is really easy to begin the practice of step 3. In all times of emotional disturbance, we're going to have emotional disturbances, the emotions and stuff, or indecision. We can pause, ask for quiet, and in the stillness simply say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Your will, not mine, be done. It's called the Serenity Prayer that's often used in the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. It's a prayer at the end. There's not a lot of that kind of. It's not a religious program. It's not like church or something like that. Not for me anyway. I've been to thousands of them, and I didn't perceive it that way. It's an individual program. These are suggestions, and there's a couple of ideas that set your mind down a path. It's a direction. It's an understanding. It's a goal to pursue. To even in your own subconscious, these types of concepts to improve yourself and your life. I hope that I have helped unlock some information here as to what Bill was saying. He wrote in considerable depth. I continue to learn and see more myself. We're going to go on to step 4 from here. That will be done in several different video takes. I'm going to video it just as it's built. The hows and whys, I'll use enough examples in my own historical experience to deepen and broaden your understanding. It's my belief the more you understand these steps, the more you understand what's happening and how, the easier it is to trust the process, or at least to understand it if in the future you want to at least be honest, right? It's better to be honest. Plenty of people can take step 1, but simply don't care. And the issue with why you don't care, that's going to take step 4 and 5 to figure that out, for example. Others, maybe they got bad information. Maybe they were ready to move on. Um, and I am of someone that I believe if you're stuck, if you're struggling with these things, step 4 and 5 will help you unlock and understand these better. You just do the best you can. Come on up to step 4, and in and maybe some of the issues that you're struggling with down here are better addressed in step 6 and 7. See, that's information that people wouldn't have helped me understand because a lot of people maybe didn't understand step 6 and 7 and the nitty gritty components of it. Now, that's I'm going back when I started 40 years ago, so maybe it's different today, you know. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you have a nice day. Thank you for listening.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. Remember to halt when you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, and take good care of yourself. These are times when we may be most vulnerable to making poor choices. Thanks for listening.